So this episode has a lot more discussion to go over, less introductions to characters, and more actually happening in the episode, which I love. So what did everybody think about the episode first?
Oh, I thought it was very powerful. I thought it was made me feel guilty a little bit that I don't take it the Sabbath as seriously as I think I should. Honestly, that was just my quick initial. I was like, I've somehow missed the boat here a little bit on this, and by watching how devout the others are. That's interesting for me.
Yeah. I've read 2 or 3 books about the Sabbath, and it's always talking about the big picture of why it's observed. Abraham Joshua Heschel says that the Sabbath is the Jewish people's cathedrals, and how they could be in prison, they could be far from home, but they always had the Sabbath, and that's something they could do right there. And so everything I've ever read about it, and every bit of studying I've done about the Sabbath is kind of the big picture. But then this is there, the image in the home, and the reciting of the oh, where's the virtuous woman from Proverbs 31. You see it in 2 or 3 homes, and I have thought, I've never been to a Sabbath meal, and so I understand the big picture, but I haven't ever seen it play out.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was powerful at the beginning when they pick up 900 years before, and the little boy is talking to his mom about it, and his mom says, it's the way we honor God, we honor our people, and welcome strangers, And I just thought, wow, like I said, I see the big picture, but I haven't looked at the little nitty gritty as much.
Mm-hmm. See, I've observed Sabbath dinner a lot. I did today, in fact. So I understand it. No, I love how they each week got together with friends and family and sat down and had a meal that was completely in remembrance of what God had done for them. That they set apart a time, not just a church service, but the Sabbath was a time set apart, a day fully set apart in remembrance of what God had done for them. And I like that. I like that they really went out of their way to spend the time in that remembrance. I like that.
There's also that element of needing one another, of celebrating one another's presence. Yeah. And it's not a go hide in a closet celebration of God. It's we are together in this.
Yeah.
We celebrate. We remember what God has done, and we remember it together. And I love the idea of the stranger in your midst. And we see Mary having several strangers in her home. Yeah. And so it's there was something pretty beautiful about that.
And with it being her first time leading the Sabbath, you saw people helping in the preparation of that. And I thought that was really cool.
Working together, know, very much the idea we are in this together. We are celebrating the presence of God together.
Yes. Particularly during that time, and for a lot of Jewish history, we live, like if you live in my neighborhood today, there were probably 3 or 4 services you could walk to if you had to. If you wanted to worship, you could walk somewhere, or certainly get in your car and choose one of 50 places to go. But the Sabbath, there a lot of times, a synagogue, you would not have a synagogue in most cities. Like a lot of people think that even Nazareth didn't have a synagogue. Capernaum did, but some people think Nazareth only years later had a synagogue. And so, that's the city Jesus grew up in. And you would have families that would meet together, but the Sabbath was the way that you remembered God. Gathering around that meal, that was the way that you did it, because you didn't have multiple opportunities to worship in a nice building, and so you had to do it around the table and around the hearth and in the home.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, being as old as I am, I remember always having someone for home at our house for lunch on the Sabbath day. We went to church and we went to people's houses and ate lunch together, and then later in the afternoon we would go to my grandmother's, which was about 30 minutes away, and we'd visit with our family. And that to me is what I consider Sabbath. I really do. I consider that Sabbath. Our world is just entirely different now, and it's not that way anymore. But I do miss it a lot. I do miss that a lot. Yeah.
Of course, I grew up in a long time ago, very conservative, and we mentioned, I think maybe even last week, something about Sunday blue laws, or we've talked about that before, where the Sunday was a very sacred day, and you couldn't buy groceries, you couldn't buy anything. Eventually, drugstores could open afternoon, maybe to get drugs, but it was a very sacred day from that point. It was imposed by law. But I sometimes laugh and kid and say, even in our town, the town reprobate drunk knew better than to get out and cut grass or do hard work or labor on Sunday. He just didn't do it. Now, he wasn't a church person, but he knew better than that because it was just against the community mores, and the community practices. Whereas now, it pretty much depends on individuals how you celebrate the Sabbath, I think. Every individual does it in different ways.
If you celebrate it.
If you do, yeah.
It's funny, we on Christmas Eve, we assume everybody's going. Well, there's Mr. Graham on Christmas Eve.
My house drunk doesn't know how to honor it.
Yeah.
Away from me.
Hey guys. Hey.
Sweet.
We kind of assume on Christmas Eve or Thanksgiving, you assume everybody's going to look for somebody they can include. Everybody's going to have a family member or family. They're going to gather together. They're going to meet and have the meal. And you're going to look for who you can invite that doesn't have a place. Could you imagine what would happen if that happened once a week instead of just Thanksgiving or just Christmas Eve or just Easter dinner? What if once a week it was just understood at sundown Friday night, everyone is going to be around the table with somebody. And when the first star comes out, everybody's going to recite the same kind of prayers and tell the same stories. I would think that would bring a whole lot of community. Mm-hmm. I think that would be a lot to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, at our daughter's church until the pandemic came, Sundays were kind of a cover dish lunch every week. Folks just brought dishes, and there were many people, just individuals who didn't have family, but they stayed at church and went to fellowship hall, and they just ate whatever happened to be there. No big plans. It was just kind of understood every week that whoever wanted to could participate in a meal together. Mm-hmm. That does bring community and fellowship.
Yeah. We actually up in Richmond at college, we had at the church I went to then, they had mooching off the pastor.
Oh.
For all the college kids would go over there on Sundays, and all of the college age people would be together on a Sunday. It was our time to get together and of course eat our pastor's food, but also hang out and be with each other all day. That it brought us a lot closer together than just going to a service and then everybody going their separate ways. It was really nice to spend that time together. There's something special about it, I think. So I liked it, and I liked what they called it too. It was good. It was good.
You sometimes, I grew up this way too, not knowing somebody until you've been in their home.
Yeah.
If you really don't
yeah.
know them until you've been in their home. And I think that's an old thing we just don't have the time and the things that we have to do and all that kind of stuff. And that's really kind of sad.
It is.
So I have a couple of questions about the episode and the actual meal itself there at the end, because Jewish customs I just don't know too much about. But so they would. I understand leaving the one chair open. I understood that part. But now the idea of everybody saying the Proverbs 31 verse, is there is there a directory that they would have to go through? Each week we'll say we were told on week 17 we all are going to cite this together. On week 19, Proverbs 31. On, what I'm saying? Or was it all? Or did it just basically say the same thing every single week? You can close your eyes and do Proverbs 31. That's going to happen. Kind of like you can just follow the program, lack of a better word. I have no idea. That's why I'm asking.
It seems like that was the same questions that Mary had when she did her first Shabbat dinner. I mean, she almost followed a template, it seemed like. I don't know what they actually do, but it's almost she went to the people that knew how to do it and almost got a template from them, is what it looked like. I mean,
you want me to go ask Bob? Because I don't know.
And I think there are certain verses, the Shema and other thing. I think there are certain verses that probably they quoted every time as a part of it. It was a pretty set ritual. The whole thing was, even the kind of food they had to remind them of either the bitterness of slavery or the whatever. I think it's pretty prescribed.
Yeah.
I read an interesting story. There was a Jewish college student at a college in Florida, and he was the only Jewish student that he knew. And so he decided that he would have a Shabbat meal every Friday night and just invite people. And what he was trying to do is trying to help teach them about his customs and his beliefs, but also he was trying to, he thought this would be a good way to get to know people, to break down some barriers. And so he started inviting people. Little did he know that one of the kids that he had been invited had been inviting was a white supremacist who was pretty famous in white supremacy world and had a radio show and a blog and things. Although he kept his identity under wraps. And they developed this friendship because this guy just kept inviting him to the meal. And eventually this guy got out of the white nationalist movement. And he said one of the reasons he did is because he got to know people from other faiths and other backgrounds. And he credited those dinners with laying the groundwork. And I don't know. I think there's something about the meal. And in today's world, I don't want to say it has to be the kind of meal, because we create those spaces where we gather and meet people. It might be a coffee shop. It might be as we walk. I mean, the point is somehow having a kind of a horizontal, where everybody's on the same level, But anyway, it's so funny that reading about this guy, he had no idea what he was doing. He just began to invite friends and thought, let's fellowship, let's just get to know each other, and I thought, when you saw particularly Mary's table, there were people who were told, hey, we could go there. I was really touched when, and obviously they personalized Jesus in ways that aren't written in scripture, but I think it's very much in keeping with what we know about him. But, she said, oh, you're a teacher, you ought to do this. And he said, no, Mary, it's your home, you do it. And I thought that was very much in character of what I know about Jesus. And I don't know if you noticed, but in Nicodemus's, where he was staying, another rabbi came and whispered to his wife, make sure you get a place at near the head of the table. They were jockeying for position at the table. And we know through through scripture and through history that was very much a thing, to kind of jockey for a spot near the host, near the head. And so one other thing that I noticed about the episode, we know a lot about Nicodemus, but you are really seeing his openness to mystery, his questioning, his you're really seeing a lot about his character.
I looked up on internet as we were talking, and there is a certain blessing that they give to the sons and the daughters, and then the Kaddish, whatever, is exactly what she quoted. The English translation: the evening, morning, the sixth day, etc. Blessed are you, O Lord, etc. Mm-hmm. And that they quote that every time. The leader does anyway, but it is what she said in the video. Mm-hmm. So apparently, again, it must be pretty set what they actually do for the dinner and the steps of the dinner and what they quote.
I know Peter and Paul got into it over this very idea that I'm about to ask you about in the book of Acts. But why do we as obviously we're part Jewish. We still believe in Allah, the same God. Jesus is the Son of God. The Jewish tradition is very much part of their Christian tradition. So why did we stop doing the meal per se, as an example, or why do we not celebrate the feast, Passover feast? We celebrate Passover for a whole other reason now, and than what the Jewish customs are. And what do you think that is? And I know that might deviate a little bit from the movie, but I'm just curious because, like I said, I think it's fascinating to watch it and relate and see it, and then, well, why are we not doing that now? So anyway, that's just a question I had.
Well, there are a lot of Christians who do, there are a lot of Messianic Jews. They keep the Jewish traditions and they believe in Jesus as the Messiah. But Christians, it tended to grow in the Greek world. So the church in a quick amount of time was more non-Jewish than Jewish, mm-hmm. In a matter of just not a lot of years. The Jewish influence wasn't the biggest influence. And so Christians worshiped on Sunday to celebrate the resurrection. So that easily made it where, but Sunday was a work day. So they would worship at night. In some, particularly in Jewish areas, Sunday was a work day. And so they would worship after work and they would have a meal. You see in Acts chapter 2, they would sing hymns, say prayers, share a meal, So the meal was very much a part of it. Again, they didn't have buildings to worship in, and oftentimes, so that's one thing. I think in addition, the we are we are children of God not through Abraham but through Jesus. That doesn't mean, but I mean, you're a child of God because of your relationship with Jesus, and so there was not a necessity to go through Abraham. They decided when you convert to Christianity, you don't have to convert to Judaism first or second or whatever, because you don't. And so it just, through time, I don't know if anyone else has but those are the first things that kind of come to my mind.
We are people of our culture, and if we get really serious at looking how we worship, we need to look at how much of it is incorporated from the culture we live in, that we let the society that we live in define how we worship. That's just a thought.
Mm-hmm.
As I understand it, for a while, many early Christians maybe participated in both the Sabbath and then the celebration of the resurrection on the first day of the week. But as Andy said, as it became more Gentile and less Jewish, or maybe just the weightiness of going through the preparation. I mean, it was quite an ordeal to get prepared and to observe. And back to culture, they might have thought, this is just a little too much. let's choose one or the other, and let's choose the resurrection as the celebration. And then, of course, we turn to the Lord's Supper and communion as a celebrative meal or feast, instead of the Jewish feast. A lot of things maybe changed all of that.
Yeah.
It kind of begs the question, though, when you cease doing the Sabbath the way the Jews did the Sabbath, what do you lose? What do we miss? What do we miss out on?
I think a lot of that preparation really gets their minds ready for the day. I think I know that in my view, Sabbath has always been a day of rest and a day of reflection, and not as much preparation and really focus. I think you lose a lot of the focus when you don't do it that way. You kind of just go with the flow instead of really focused on it, I guess.
Ritual does.
That's what that
Ritual does help with that. Different rituals you have does help in preparing your hearts and minds for things.
Yeah.
We consider ourselves sort of anti-ritual, but ritual does play a part. And I think we do lose out in the preparation, but I was also thinking about that empty seat that we have at the table of having it open, not just for Elijah, but for the stranger in our midst. We tend to be a very insulated people. We don't tend to invite the strangers into our homes and into our lives with a lot of comfort. We don't have a setup for that, and that would definitely be a setup for inviting the stranger in your midst.
Yeah. Like to be considered set apart, I guess.
Yeah,
and that's not the way it should be. Yeah.
If you think back to Genesis, it says every day, day one, and it was good, and God saw what He did, and it was good. But on the seventh day, it wasn't good. It was holy. It was sacred. It was set apart. It was different. And so for me, I'll always think about is there a day that you make sacred, set apart, holy? Like you described, going to grandmoms or going to your aunts or uncles or going to visit people. Um, in some churches, they have flower arrangements in the sanctuary, fresh flowers every Sunday. And then after church, they divide them up and take them to people that day, and it's like, this is a different time. This is a different day. We do this on this day to tell people we worshiped, we remember them, we want to connect with them, and I've always kind of thought, what do you do to make, what can we do to make it, um, holy, meaning set apart,
That's I've always thought, at least, that one of the distinguishing characteristics of the Jews that was so different than any other faith, I guess, really, was the Sabbath. I mean, a lot of others had baptisms and other things, but the Sabbath and the sacredness of the Sabbath, it makes me wonder about the public observance, what a witness that was. It also caused them persecution and whatever, but for us today, is there some kind of public witness, in our own personal practices, so that others may observe us on a Sunday, for example, and wonder, okay, maybe they've been out drinking and boozing and carousing or fishing or whatever else they wanted to do all day long, and we've been in worship part of that day. If I join in some of the same things that they join in, I always wonder, okay, will they think, well, I don't think any more of that day as a Christian than they do, and they give no thought to it at all. I always wonder about the public appearance, the witness that it is, how we observe Sundays for us as opposed to Sabbath per se. And I don't know, that's always kind of a conflict in my own mind, has been. Because it is a day of rest, reflection, a day to be enjoyed. He is Lord of the Sabbath. So, but by not having a public display of some sort in our own lives or whatever, are we missing the opportunity to be a witness that, hey, we really think there is a difference about this, and it's because of our serving the Lord. It's not just a regulation, but it's because of our trust in God. I don't know. Our culture doesn't much go with that anymore, of course. Yeah. So it's really a question in my mind.
And for instance, this, we'll post this and you could watch it on Tuesday night at 9. The services are online, and we're in person, and most churches are in person right now. But when you weren't in person, you could watch worship at whatever time you wanted to. You could watch it in the middle of the night. You could watch it by yourself. You could get a group of people. But what is the essence of kind of gathering together? And, I guess one of the things that I noticed about the Sabbath, it's not passive. Everybody at that table was an active participant, even if they had just been invited and they were there, but they were actively engaged right there. And I think, gosh, that's kind of in our faith, we should, all of us should be actively engaged. It's not just a passive participant.
Another difference in their Shabbat, and the way that we honor the Sabbath, is their Shabbat started Friday evening and went all the way until Sunday. And we use our Sunday as our day of rest. And they started on Friday with their reflection and going through what they needed to go through, and their preparation, and then their reflection, and then the Sunday, when they got to the Sunday, then they did their day of rest. I think I know that I always looked at the Sabbath as a day of rest, a day where we don't spend anything else. We don't concentrate on anything else. We just focus on God. But it's easy for me to choose rest. I mean, that's what I choose every day. But I think that like I said, that focus, it should start throughout near the end of your week, and your day of rest is only in preparation for your next week of going out and sharing what Jesus has done for us, and what God continues to do for us. And so, it's a day of refreshing yourself for the week ahead, and to get out there and do more during that week.
Yeah, the Jews would not say, I mean, that's exactly right. They would not say that you have 6 days to work and then, there's one day that's different. They would say that one day shapes everything else.
Yeah.
I mean, the Sabbath makes them who they are, and that one day guides everything else. And that's really the way it should be, even though we don't celebrate the Sabbath like they do. Your worship and your Sunday, or like I say, for some of us it's just a little bit different now that with the way schedules work and all. But your Sunday is not just an by the way. That is what is molding and shaping, or should be, molding and shaping what the priorities of the week, attitudes, Thanksgiving, the way you look backwards and the way you look around and the way you look forwards.
Mm-hmm. So one of the discussion questions that it had for this day was about rest on the Sabbath. And I, like I said, I think that it's in preparation part. It's, but they ask, we rest on the Sabbath and honor our family, our people, and God on the Sabbath, and we refresh our souls. So rest is a restorative gift. What are some ways that we can use this rest as a restorative gift in our lives? So what do you guys think is a way that we can use that rest as a restorative gift in our life? In my opinion, it's taking that rest gives time to reflect. It reflect on the hope that comes with God, and remembering what He's done in the past and how He can continue to restore us in the future. And that focus is what I was talking about earlier. It's when you stay busy throughout the weekend, it's hard to look back and remember the things that God's done for you. And so I think that using that rest for reflection is a great tool, in my opinion. So what does everybody else think about the using rest?
Do as I say and don't do as I do is what comes to my mind. As it's supposed to be a day of rest, it always seems like I'm getting ready for the upcoming week. Either with helping my children with their homework assignments or my lesson plans personally. I take the time, the 2 to 3 hour block there, and sometimes Sunday nights, the hour block, and make that a special time. But then it seems to me like it's just as busy as any other day, unfortunately, because there's things I need to get done for tomorrow that the work requires me to do today, and it's just a constant constantly going over. But as a good friend always tells me, God has this under control. He's had it under control way before you came along, and he'll have it under control way after you're gone. But that's sometimes hard to handle and to think of.
I'd say sometimes you have to kind of start small. I have a friend who's a minister, and he pastors a vibrant church, and he started realizing that Sunday, he just took a baby step. Now, Sunday for a pastor is not a day of rest in any definition, but he started Sunday just from the time he finished with church till he went to bed, turning off his cell phone on Sundays. And just because he was like, I feel like a slave to this. There needs to be a period of time when and that was just kind of a small thing. I don't know. I think anything that I like the term. I don't remember the discussion question, but the restorative rest, it's like, I love that, because if you think about in the Bible, you're given two reasons that the Sabbath is to be observed. One, because God did it, worked 6 days, created the world, and then rested and enjoyed the creation on the seventh day. And so, the natural question is, gosh, if God can rest and the world can keep on spinning, you don't think it can with you resting?
Yeah.
And then, but the second reason is given after the Exodus. You were slaves. You didn't have a choice about when you worked, who your master was, what your life was to be about, but you're not slaves anymore. Mm-hmm. And those both speak powerfully to me about restoration. Obviously, there are people who work on Sunday. There are things that come up on Sunday. None of us live in a vacuum. Bill, you with your kids, you have a certain window of your life where their needs are going to always kind of trump your plans. In that window, I don't know how big it'll be, but several of us are in the middle of it. But still, you have what if the Sabbath and worship and commitment to God is on the inside? And so it might be that you take baby steps and say, hey, we get together with family, or we worship, or we reflect, or we do. We at the meal, we do something different. I think anything to set it apart for God and for God's glory is a step in the right direction. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but I like that word, restorative rest.
Yeah. Because I know a lot of the time on a Sunday, which is considered the Sabbath day, I pass out after lunch. So, I love the view of the Jewish Shabbat being from Friday afternoon until Sunday when the sun goes down. I mean, because there's so much.
I think we lost part of that, Josh.
You can reflect on, and there's so much to be thankful for. Oh, sorry. You hear me now?
Yeah, we lost part of that. It was probably really profound, but we missed it.
You guys,
I've got to go.
You guys missed the light beaming from my face.
Thank you for being here, Norman.
Yeah. Good.
But yeah, I love the way that they use their entire weekend as so you can prepare and have the time to rest and reflect. And, you've got the time to focus and rest and reflect in multiple days instead of just one 24-hour block. So I like to use that as the Sabbath. The entire weekend, I think, can be considered a Sabbath, especially for you as a pastor. I mean, you only work one day a week.
Well, half a day Sunday and half a day Wednesday.
Yeah.
Don't forget that. Yeah, I watched that episode. I've seen it either 3 or 4 times since we started previewing these several months ago. And every time it has been the most moving when Jesus showed up and to Mary's home. It has just been very powerful. I have found that so very moving.
Yeah.
Well, her testimony of what happened when Jesus, she said, I know what I was or whatever, but I was changed. I'm not that anymore. He called my name and said that I'm his. That's a real powerful segment of that particular episode too.
Amen.
Right at the beginning. I mean, it's just, it almost brings tears to your eyes when she tells Nicodemus, it wasn't anything you did.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All I know is that I was one way.
And now, yeah.
Then he called me by name.
And the difference between, yeah.
Yeah.
And the difference between was him. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah. That's powerful.
I just noticed the last time I watched it that Nicodemus had a tear coming down his eye in that conversation. Huh. You have to watch real carefully. But again, it just kind of highlights his curiosity, because at the house, when he and his wife were hosting the Shabbat meal, one of the rabbis said, "Hey, you're here in our town now. We're complete." And he's like, "Only God makes you complete." I mean, he knows he is a very influential religious person. I mean, he's kind of one of the chief muckety mucks, so to speak. But he does, deep down, he still recognizes the power of God and is curious about and wants to understand. And I think I can't wait to see how that all plays out.
Well, I can't wait to. Yeah. I can't wait to see. I'm going.
No, you're here.
Yeah, you got
I was very impressed with that he said about the children, that heard what was going on, what evidently their parents were talking about, or something at their house. And those children had probably been to church a whole lot, and probably had been to Sunday school a whole lot and everything. But their seeing that was having some kind of really something that was touching kids, which that really, that just surprised me so much. I just thought that is, you would have thought the kids wouldn't pay any attention to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Josh, are there any closing words that you have? I think this was a good.
I just loved this episode. I love that it's kind of a point where I love Mary she pretty much gives her testimony of what happened that day. And Nicodemus is trying to tell people it was nothing I did. This is God. And so it's an amazing look at what God did in the people's lives at that time.
Yeah. Well, thank y'all so much.
I like this episode a lot.
Do you want me to close with prayer?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Josh, thank you. And everyone, thank you for being here. And
yes.
I encourage you this week to watch episode 3 and just kind of see where it takes your thoughts. And I've watched the director talk about this, and he's just trying to create a plausible picture of the scenes around the gospel. And I think it's just so good to kind of enter into it and engage with it the way that we've been able to. So let me close with a word of prayer. Gracious God, I thank you for these friends that have gathered tonight, and I thank you for the not just the beauty of this story that's told, but the truth of the story that's told. That when Jesus calls our names, we are His, and that you are the loving God who has created this world and formed us and shaped us, and you want to know us, and you want us to know you, and you want us to live faithfully following you. And so I just thank you for the chance that we have to examine all the different things that that can mean in our lives. And I pray that you would guide each of us this week. And thank you for this time that we've had together. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 All right. We will see everybody soon. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good to see everybody on the screen.
There you go.
On the big screen, our little screen.
Yeah.